The Buffalo Bills got jobbed last night. And if you don't believe me, just watch a replay of the game. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And let's address the accusations that are bound to come up for this podcast right away first. Yes, I am a fan of the Buffalo Bills. One might say I'm a super fan of the Buffalo Bills. I love them dearly. Can't get enough of them. Until yesterday. And the second thing, the Buffalo Bills had at least four turnovers in the game. They were -3, I think, ended up on the turnover differential. It's not a good way to win games. For sure, not a good way to win games. But the nonsense we're talking about happened at the very end of regulation and in overtime. At that point, those turnovers, they're in the past. They don't matter anymore. I'll give you the third point. Josh missed Dawson Knox for what would have been the walk-in touchdown, and none of the ref nonsense ends up mattering. But 4 ref calls impacted the game and made a gigantic difference. 1, a non-call at the end of regulation of pass interference on Brandon Cooks. I don't hate not making the call against Brandon Cooks. They had been letting the players play all game, and at the end of the game, you don't just suddenly change up how you've been reffing the game, right? Okay. 2, I have never seen in my adult life a simultaneous catch of the football end up as an interception somehow just because the defender ripped the ball out of the guy's hands when he was on the ground. Gene Steratore, I don't give a crap. I cannot see in that scenario where Cooks lost control of the ball until he was down by contact. If you want to say there's some magic legalese nonsense in the rules that means the player is allowed to rip the ball out of a guy's hands when he's down by contact, then you're not playing football anymore. You're just playing some weird form of crazy tackle. And what are we even doing? That was a clear catch by Brandon Cooks, down by contact, and then the Broncos defender ended up with the ball. You want to argue that with me? You can argue until you're blue in the face. You can come up with whatever weird, mundane thing you want to come up with by purely watching that replay. And we watch replays in slow motion to make decisions all the time, every day. Like, I don't know why we didn't even get a cursory review of that play in a critical moment at a critical juncture when coaches were no longer allowed to challenge the play on the field, meaning any replay had to come from upstairs. Carl Sheffers, who flopped hysterically on that call, didn't have control over doing further review. It had to come from New York. New York was only watching one game at a time. They weren't doing anything else. They weren't busy. All they had to do was take 10 minutes and look at it. I'm still mad if you disagree that if you think it's still an interception. I'm still mad, but at least you looked at it. And when you look at it from multiple different angles, he's got the ball. He's knee, butt on the ground. The defender is contacting him. That is, at worst, simultaneous possession of the ball, which is a tie that goes to the offense, and it was likely just a normal catch. 9 times out of 10, that's a catch. If I catch the ball, go to the ground, my knee and my butt are on the ground, and I've got possession of the ball, and then I fling the ball away, but I'm touched by the defender before I fling the ball away, it's not a fumble. I've caught the ball. I've been down by contact. The play is over. That's it. For some reason, magically in this situation, it became an interception. I don't know how that's possible. It didn't make any sense to me. Okay, fine. Whatever. You move on from that play. Now we get to the 2 defensive pass interference calls called against the Bills to end the game, which gave the Broncos literally all of the offense they got on the last drive of the game. That got them all the way into field goal range. Guess what? Both of those calls were equally as egregious as the contact on Brandon Cooks at the end of regulation that would have allowed the Bills to win in regulation with a field goal. They could have won in regulation with the touchdown that they would have probably gotten at that point. The first one, Taron Johnson, was the softest. I'm talking hampers, diapers, baby smooth, soft defensive pass interference. But Nick, Joey Bosa committed roughing the passer anyway. Yeah, that's 15 yards instead of 25. That's a massive difference in that game. And then the call on Trey White. You know what? Yeah, Trey White, he was being a little grabby. He was playing rough defense with the guy. But guess what? You hadn't been calling that call all game. You had been letting them play. Defenders do that when you don't call it all game because they think that that's the standard for the game. Number one, we shouldn't have different standards throughout games. Refs are human. Let's just say refs are human. If you call it that way all game, meaning you're just going to let the players play unless it's something absolutely egregious, i.e. the pass interference call that happened to Brandon Cooks at the end of regulation, then you can't then decide that you're going to whistle because that was another 25 yards of offense, and that was what decided the game. That play decided the game. The Zebras stepped in and decided the game. Now, throwing my fandom out the window for a second here, because that's what I need to do, and I use a timer, so I have to look down. Throwing my fandom out the window here for a second. When you, as a league, welcomed gambling as a legitimate source of revenue into the conversation, that's when these calls start to look really, really bad. You were delayed 20 minutes already for the next game, meaning there was pressure on the league. And guess what? When the Bills had the ball and money line was swinging towards them, guess how Vegas makes money? They make money by screwing people over on bets. If big money had come in on the Bills in that moment because they were driving down the field or they had a good opportunity to drive down the field or they had the ball, next score wins, most likely then at that point, the Bills have the favored odds. If that is the case, then Vegas wants nothing more than for the money line to swing the other way. So when you have gambling as a legitimate source of revenue in your sport, that is when the questions start to come in. Did Vegas just call in and make the fix? Well, Nick, Vegas can't just fix games. Vegas doesn't tell the players what to do. No, but Vegas tells the refs when and what penalties to call. And they call them in high leverage situations. That's the key. Sure. Well, there were calls. Those were the highest leverage situations that the refs could affect. And they affected. And they stepped in and they made the game about them. I love football. The game. It is an incredible game of technique and strategy and just magnificent athletics. The pro game is supposed to be the pinnacle of that sport. It is supposed to be the best of the best on a field deciding which team is going to win. When the refs step in, they should be stepping in only to enforce those rules that need to be enforced. And they should be enforcing them completely fairly. You want to call a bad game? Fine. But you got to call that bad game both ways then. If you want to swallow your whistles and let the players play, I'm in favor of that. But then you have to swallow your whistle. Because even if you aren't taking calls from Vegas, it sure looks the hell like you are. And it's just maddening. Maddening that 4 referee plays are what ended up deciding the Bills game for them. Oh, but Nick, they had the 4 turnovers. They did all this. They shot themselves in the foot. At the point at which the refs' calls were made, the Bills had overcome their turnovers. They had overcome their turnovers at them. Turnovers no longer mattered. If you tell me, and if you sit there and you say to me, you could spout the turnover battle statistics to me all you want, that tells me you don't actually watch games. It tells me you watch box scores. I talked about this before. It's the stupid, teams that win run the ball more. Yeah, that's because they're winning and they want to run the clock out. It's a statistical correlation. It's not a causation. Anyways, I think we have to accept that there's gambling in football, and that means that it's more WWE than it is football anymore. Sure, the players actually play football. I don't think the players are in on it. But you can't tell me that the referees who are not pro referees, meaning they have day jobs, you can't tell me that if Vegas or a bookie or somebody called them and said, hey, you want to make $250,000 this game? Throw a couple of flags when you see the opportunity. You can't tell me that the NFL as a whole wouldn't just say, hey, we're taking all this money from Vegas. Let's leave a line open so that we can get a call from whoever, whatever bookies at the major casinos or at BetMGM or DraftKings or whatever of these, Kalshi or whatever one of these freaking betting websites that shows up is. I'm mad. I'm gonna not even watch the Super Bowl. I don't even care. It's who's what's it versus I don't give a you know what. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick, and I do, despite the fact that I'm angry, mean this sincerely. Have a great day.